Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Veeam Beam. So, over the weekend, I was thinking again about changing the name for my YouTube show just because I guess it's going to be spring and there are flowers coming out and bees flying around, and you figure, well, maybe it's time to have a change. Now, in a fit of inspiration, I first called it Veeam Visions, and then I realized this sounded like a you know, glasses place, right? Where you go and buy glasses, Veeam Vision. So I thought that's no good. So this morning I thought, when I was looking out at the sun, at the beams of the sun, and we just had an eclipse, I thought, Veeam Beam. It rhymes, it sounds interesting, and it's different. Okay, so this is now the Veeam Beam, unofficial. I always say unofficial because, some will say, well, are you affiliated with Veeam? No, I'm not. So it's called the Veeam Beam. Hopefully, I'll get a few more YouTube searches, whatever. People might think bean and coffee beans or something, but that's better risk than the people coming for glasses, I guess, because they probably can't read it anyways, right? So, anyways, stop it. I shouldn't make jokes about that. If I take my glasses off, things become quite fuzzy. Well, actually, that's not too bad. The big letters are okay. Anyways, let's get serious. So, one of the things I wanted to do with the show is keep talking about Kubernetes, of course, but to talk more about Veeam. And so, and in particularly about a project that I thought up of uh, on the Community Hub. So back in December, I believe, or maybe it was November. They'll correct me if I'm wrong. It was not long after I finished doing a CK study group for the CK for code, because I'm a code cloud ambassador, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun because people then thanked me afterwards. It wasn't a lot of work. What I found about the study group, which was interesting, was it was more helping people pull things out of themselves than you really directing them or showing them the way. So, one of the things I came to understand after talking to a few of these people or messaging after the CK study group was that there were certain things I said or certain things I did, and the students then looked into themselves and thought, well, how do I do that? No, I wouldn't do it that way. I'll do it this way. So it wasn't that they're following you, blind faith kind of thing. It's just that you're showing them methods of study or things that you do to practice for exams. Some of them they agree with, some of them they don't agree with, some of them they like, some they don't like, some things they find boring. But what it did was it inspired them to think, okay, well, what do I like doing? What study methods do I like? Are there any different study methods I can use or techniques I can use to become good enough or strong enough to pass the exam? And that's what I found to be very, very interesting and probably the most, I'd say, gratifying thing of the whole CK study group. So I thought, well, wait a minute, there's nothing like this for Veeam. I hadn't seen it out there. So I approached the Community Hub leadership and said, hey, can we create a certification study group? And we talked about it, and we basically decided to set it up. We did think, though, that over time it would be better to separate them because they are both big exams. And one of the things that I was worried about was you'd have people dipping into both. And that's not a good idea. At least for me, it wasn't. I've tried doing that with other exams, and I ended up doing both exams badly. It's like multitasking. Really, the human brain does not do many things at the same time well. A computer does, we don't. We do really things well when we focus, when we're in the zone. You talk to any athlete, superstar athlete, or anyone who's doing anything which requires enormous concentration and focus, and you see they go into a zone at some point where it almost becomes automatic, their performance, but it's because of enormous focus and ingrained focus. And we lose that when we're trying to do too many things at once, or specifically trying to study too many things at once. Now, obviously, if you're in university or in school, you have to study many things at the same time, but you could use similar study types. But when it comes to Veeam, I think it's better to separate because these exams, at least in the past, don't know what the new exam is. I haven't taken the new one yet. I took the 2022. Were different, and they were different in very subtle ways. So better to focus on one, get it done, and then go do the next one. That's my opinion. So that's why we've separated the groups. I highly encourage you to just join one group. Don't join both groups because it can become confusing. Obviously, to get the Veeam Certified Architect certification, you have to know Veeam very, very well. But you can get into trouble because if you're approaching the exam purely from a knowledge standpoint, there are questions, obviously, going to be trick questions, and they might be looking for that. Okay, not that I don't know the new exam, but my previous exam experiences, I remember there's some things that I just jumped out at right away. At first, oh, I know the answer to that. But then I forgot. This is an architect exam. And they were giving us a scenario. And the scenario said, this is what the customer wants or is willing to pay for. So even if your great VMC knowledge is enough to tell you, oh, here's the best solution, you have to think as an architect, not as an engineer, in the sense that you can only apply what the customer wants. So important factor. My advice, we're not a totalitarian state telling you what to do. So yeah, do what you like, but my advice. Okay, so what are some of the initiatives that I'm trying to bring forward on this VMC study hall? So I took the VMCA study hall because I did the VMC already, and basically I want to try to get a free exam voucher from Federica Saba. Oh, did I say that? No, I mean, she sometimes gives free courses, which if you do the course, you get the exam voucher for free. But it's very much once in a long while, and if you're lucky, I think it's a lottery. Obviously, doing all this work might have some kind of influence. Joking. Whoa, I just kicked my desk. See, the world shook. It's like the earthquake in New York. So I passed the Veeam 12, let's say VMC exam. They do it they have the name as yearly, which my personal opinion is kind of silly. So your VMC 2023 or VMC 2024, it's the same exam. It's a Veeam 12 exam. Same thing with VMCA. So I haven't done the VMCA, the new one yet. I've done two previous VMCA exams. I did the VMCA 8.0, the original one they came out with. And recently, as in 2 years ago, the VMCA 2022. Okay, so a few initiatives I'm going to try to do here. One of the things about a study hall is it's different from a course. Okay, it's supposed to be out of the box. It's different. You're dealing with human beings, different ways of thinking, different languages. And my approach to this should be, there should be different and interesting new techniques to study. So first of all, I'm doing a daily or almost daily question, and these will be pretty simple. These will be pretty much going over knowledge more than anything else, but knowledge more directed towards an architect in an architect manner than in a pure VMC manner. Obviously, they sometimes fall together very closely, but I'm going to try to focus it more in that direction. The other thing I want to do is to introduce you to real architects, so VMCAs out there who had VMCA and need to redo it like myself, and do a interview with them. The interview is going to be a stream of thought, a stream of consciousness interview by paper. So we're going to old school because remember, focus. None of this Flipper, Twitter, or whatever, all these social media places, which I don't like, where it's constant bombardment of information because there's a lot of false and incorrect information when it comes like that to you. So what I do with these architects, I ask them a question one day, I get the answer back, I ask them a question based on that answer the next day. And we do that for 5 days, so back and forth. So the person has time to think about their answer, think about the question. It's not, quick. Not AI, it's, I would say, HI, human intelligence, right? Which is much more preferable, in my opinion, for most things other than mundane tasks. So we've got that going on. And the first person I interviewed was myself, just so that I'd set the bar nice and low and everyone else, would say, oh, well, I can beat that. Next week's going to be Michael Paul. I've heard that Chris Childerhost is also on the lineup and others will come as well. Another thing I'm going to try to do too is create a fun way of thinking about Veeam architect issues, problems, and designs. The way I'm going to do that is going to be a series called Tales from the Crypt. So that first series I talked about is called Meet the Architects. Okay, you're going to meet the architects. They'll give you some advice, some background, and the more advice you can get from people who have done this before, the better. The second initiative is going to be called Tales from the Crypt. So we all love horror movies, right? Well, some of us don't, but popcorn. So I'm going to go back into my memory, change all the names, change all the companies, probably even mix situations so that I can't get sued or something. And I'll tell stories of Tales from the Crypt. So horror stories of design, not necessarily just Veeam. It might be a horror story from a different product, which of course I will not name, but then is solved by Veeam or could be solved by Veeam. So that would be a question. What would you do kind of thing. So that's called Tales from the Crypt. Should be entertaining. Get popcorn and read it. Some of them will be very scary if you're in IT because you never want to face them. And I've seen it all, unfortunately. Done a few dumb mistakes myself. So that should be quite inspiring. And I will try to produce that once a week. So as for the show, which is now the Veeam Beam, one of the major focuses not only will be going through these questions and seeing if I can think of an answer. My answer might not be right, by the way, or might not be the best answer. And that is important. From my previous experience with VMCA exams, there could be 3 right answers, but one for the given situation is the best. So you have to think hard and concentrate on what fits best from an architect standpoint, as opposed to VMC where there's one right answer or answers that are close, but there really is one only answer. That's my opinion. Okay, so let's switch over now to the VMCA study hall, and I will show everybody what it looks like. So there it is. They called it study hall, not study group. It gives it that kind of feeling you're, back in university at the study hall. But unfortunately, that name though, when I hear study hall, it reminds me of beer hall, right? Beer hall, and so it's a little bit confusing for me because, anyways, just my thing. Maybe because October's coming up. Well, no, it's not. It's not coming up soon. It's coming up in 6 months. Anyways, called the study hall. There's Alfred, and there Alfred's got the VMCA book. Got some nice pens. 3 cups of coffee. I hope it's coffee. I don't recommend that. That's a bit of 4. Oh, that looks like tea though. Well, 5. There are 5 cups there. So I would not recommend doing that, especially before the exam, because you'll end up having to go to the bathroom or the restroom, as they say in the US. Alfred's a little bit too enthusiastic there. Maybe there's yogurt or something in there. Okay. But there's Alfred studying away. And we will look at some of the questions. So originally I was going to do question 1, question 2, question 3, and then I realized that I try to get these out quickly and I forget which number it is. I don't have time to go back and look, so I'm doing it by date now. Okay, so I don't know how many I've done. I think I've done 2 or 3, but let's just go through and see. So here's the first question. Bring it up. So Burke's Brewery, already there's a problem there because I quit drinking, but nevertheless, set up. And look, the English isn't great. That's on purpose to mess you up, right? Setup is running at capacity. So its backup setup is running at capacity. That is correct. Okay, so running at capacity. However, management, for security reasons, has decided to encrypt all local backup traffic. Okay, what Veeam component will most likely need to be given more resources? Okay, well, there could be a few, but there's one that really sticks out. When you encrypt traffic, and what we're talking about here is not encryption at rest. That's separate. This is actually encrypting inside of your internal network, which companies will do sometimes because they don't want any kind of interception to take place. And what is going to be affected by that? Well, if you think about it, what is doing the workload when backups are taking place for VMs in a network? And what will have to, so sending the data, what will have to add more resources and what kind of resources? Well, think about it. Encryption is going to be CPU intense, obviously, right? Okay. And CPU intense, what's the guess? Well, Chris Childerhost, by the way, so far the best student. He seems to answer everything, okay? This is why, this happens when you write a book, right? You just start writing and you just keep answering. So he's going to win the prize. There might be a prize, by the way. We'll see. That's what inspire people. So he writes, that would be proxy servers and CPU RAM resources need adjustment. So RAM as well, there would be some RAM, especially CPU, but he's right, RAM as well. So that's a very good answer. And link status backed them up on that, higher CPU consumption. So obviously it's probably going to be more CPU. So if they've cornered you in the exam, and let's say they've given you choices and they only put CPU, I would choose that one. Okay, so great, 2 answers. That was the first question. Let's go back and see what other questions we might have here. Alrighty. Question 2, nutty Nutanix. Now, why nutty Nutanix? Well, I decided to play around with Nutanix, and it's not nutty. It's actually quite good. I really actually like it. The only thing I don't like about it is that, unlike my love Kubernetes, it is heavy on the resources. And my little lab, I can get one single node going. I can get into Prism Element and do all that. I tried Prism Central, won't go. So I'll have to spend some more cash, obviously, on that. But I decided to ask a question about Nutanix. Okay, so Burke's Binoculars, received a huge new bill from VMware and hastily migrated their entire infrastructure over to Nutanix. An enthusiastic Veeam salesperson who had just has his quota increased mid-quarter. I don't think that ever happens. That's just a joke to salespeople. I didn't know it existed. That actually happens to some salespeople, not at Veeam, but I took them as an example. Told Burke's CTO, Troublesome Tom, I don't know why Troublesome Tom, but I just thought that up, that Veeam can back up Nutanix just like it did vSphere. The local admin, Sneaky Steve, wants to leverage dedicated workers since his environment is quite large, 999 VMs. Okay, so when I give you a number like that, you know that somewhere in the documentation something might be said about that. What should Steve modify on Nutanix Veeam backup appliance? And we'll add 2 vCPU and one gigabyte of RAM to be the optimum amount of resources for management tasks. So I think what I have to do with these questions is reread them 10 times to make sure they make sense. What should Steve modify in the Nutanix Veeam backup appliance? Okay, and add. So I'm saying what should be modified, and this 2 vCPUs and 1 gig of RAM should be added for the optimum amount. Okay, and Chris again has come with the answer. There's no addition. Well, wait a minute. There's no addition for resources for management tasks, but since the VM count is just under 1,000, for the embedded worker, you need 1 and 1 gig. So there you go. So embedded worker. Okay. There is on the Nutanix documentation, the Veeam Nutanix documentation, a graph, basically a not a graph, what do you call it? A list of resources for each thing, and that's where the answer is, plain and simple. Now, would this pop up in the exam or not? Nutanix, I don't know. But I've learned in the past, it's good to kind of have a relative idea about these numbers, because they sometimes throw in one of these things, like something, Google Cloud, Nutanix. They've got all these products, they support them all, and as an architect, you really have to at least have conception. Not hard, nothing super hard, but something like this, you can probably remember, okay? Alrighty, Chris was the only one who attempted that one. And let's go to question number 3. So question number 3 from last week. This comes from Member of Parliament. I gave him that nickname. It's actually Michael Paul, Member of Parliament, because it's Britain and they have parliaments like we have here in Canada. So Dynamic Dan is keen to leverage new features in Veeam. Okay, Dynamic Dan is keen. That spells he's going for, bleeding edge stuff, which just been introduced. At present, he has 10 VBR servers over in 10 different locations, all connected by fast corporate internet, VPN. For convenience sake, he leverages Enterprise Manager to provide at-a-glance access to all of his VBR servers, and also obviously to leverage RBAC capabilities. 2 weeks ago, his company, for the first time in 4 years, acquired a new location, and Dan was quick to install a new VBR server. However, when back at the head office, he is having issues adding that VBR server to Veeam Enterprise Manager. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do, maybe not beautifully, but nevertheless in this question, was to make you think of key pieces of information in a question, which is especially important for the architect's exam. Dynamic Dan, right? Dynamic new features. So this person likes to use the latest and greatest new features, loves doing it. Great. Company has not added a VBR server for 4 years. So think right away. Here's somebody who likes new features. 4 years, that means the last time that he did it was 4 years ago, and that was the state of the technology then. Okay. All right, adds a new VBR server. I think by default, guess what? It's going to use Postgres. But even if it wasn't, Dynamic Dan would want to use Postgres because it's new. Okay, the key element here is you cannot have a Postgres Enterprise Manager or a Postgres VBR database and a Enterprise Manager on SQL. They can't work together, and vice versa. Okay, so that is important, and I think someone got that. Michael Paul actually gave me that idea. So epic failing. I love that. Epic failing. I love that name. Or the VBR. Okay, he's saying the VBR version is higher and newer. That's a pretty good guess. But remember, 4 years, Dangerous Dan using new things. I think someone got it. Let's say hints. I had to give a hint. Chris got it in the end. So, and then Michael Paul gave us a big explanation. It was great. So yes, SQL cannot support Postgres and vice versa. Okay. So sometimes when you think of these things, and that's also good too, because during these exams, always use the time, if you have it left, to review. I have numerous times caught myself in a similar situation where I've made maybe not a quick judgment, but a certain judgment, done everything else, come back with a fresh, well, maybe not fresh because the end of the exam, but a different mindset, looked at the question again and gone, no, wait, it's not that. So that's a good point here as well. So congratulations. Let's see. What other question? That was 3. That was 4. So here's one. Here's one from Thursday 11th, and I think I know it's this one. So you need to completely uninstall all of VBR and all of its components, okay? What is a fast command line method to do this? Now, would that question be on a VMCA exam? I don't know, but it was a fun question in the sense that there are various ways to do it. And these answers are all right. I would add on that there is a WMIC way to do this as well. But again, all these are great. Oh, there it is right there. There's a WMIC link state, got it. But these ones are all working. So what I also like about questions like that is you're getting a lot of right questions, so different ways of doing it, okay? But again, would that be on an exam? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. Unless it's one of those questions, that they add in there for the fun of it. Okay, so question number. Here's one that I forgot the number, and that's when I switched to going to dates because I couldn't remember what the date was. Okay. When a scale-out repository leveraging object storage has a capacity tier, which of the following does it use for tiering jobs? If in the performance tier, it is not using gateway mode, but instead direct. So, object storage using direct mode, not gateway. It's got a capacity tier in the scale-out, and it's going to offload. What is it going to use to offload? This is something I did not know and came about by accident internally here at the company. It's the mount server, a mount server, okay? You can only have one mount server per repository, so think about that. If you had chosen gateway mode, it would be gateways, okay? So interesting there. Just a question I thought was, out of the blue. Oh, I went to the wrong thing, went to recent, let's go back. We'll go back to our questions. I think there's one question left. Oh, no, there isn't because I did the 15th before. Okay, so those are the questions. I'll try to do that every week. I'll try to get better. And I would also ask you to send your questions in too, or post your questions here. That's fine as well. And remember, even if you think you've got it wrong, or even if you got a question you don't know the answer to, post it. Because we have a lot of people here who will be happy to answer. Okay, that's it this week on the Veeam Beam. I will see you all next week. Hopefully, can't promise every week, but we will get back into our studying of the VMCA. See you next week.